welcome to another episode of Diary of a Wannabe Comedian with me, Belle Finn, a wannabe comedian. I'm saying Belle Finn like that because for some reason the automatic translation always gets my name wrong. I don't know why. Anyway, I wish I could turn it off, but I can't, or at least I can't work out how to do it. Doesn't mean it can't be done. I just can't do it. This podcast is not going to be that long because I'm exceedingly tired, having been in Birmingham since Saturday morning, and that was for the Equity AGM. And I'm not going to talk much about that in this podcast because I really want to think about what I'd like to pass on and digest what I've been through, because it was just so unlike anything else I've encountered in my life. I don't come from a background of trade unionists, and so being immersed in that environment was a real eye-opener for me. Particularly, as you know, I'm really not that political, and of course it was quite political in places. So it's led me to think about my role and what I can realistically do that will sit right with me for equity and the people that I represent. But like I say, I don't want to go into that in much detail. Let's do that on Thursday, because I can't imagine much is going to happen between now and Thursday, although I have got a gig on Wednesday. Yay! So what can I tell you? I did meet someone though. I met a very nice friend called Caroline who has her own podcast. If you want to check it out, it's called The Perception Podcast. And she is an exceedingly lovely lady, having spent a few days with her. It was really good because we sort of sat next to each other, and she is from my branch of Equity, but we clicked and then spent most of the rest of the time chatting, really, chatting about this and that. But I recommend you check her podcast out. In the absence of saying anything more about the AGM, I will talk about last Thursday, because I went to a charity event, it's a friend of Matt, aka Larissa Thorne, who I believe had an accident, a rugby accident, when he was sort of early teenage years, and it was obviously very serious, and he ended up in a wheelchair, and I think it's tetraplegic, which I'm showing I don't know enough about this. You'd think I would, wouldn't you, given it was all about his spine, but I think that means sort of chest down with limited use of your arms. But anyway, he was raising money because he's raising money for two charities, I think, because he intends to climb Kilimanjaro later in the year. And the event had an auction. It had what's that one where I told you I'm tired. The one where you draw out, raffle, that's it. So there was an auction, there was a raffle, they were selling merch, and then there was a lot of comedians. And it was very good. It was the most enjoyable night. There was only one point that I got a little bit arsey about, shall we say. And that's two of the comedians actually tried to make jokes about being in a wheelchair. And not that you can't do that, it's just they have to be funny, you know. And this event was in a place, I believe it's where a running group meet. So one of the comedians was trying to make a joke about, the Max, who's in a wheelchair, as I said, hosting an event in a running venue. And you could hear that everybody was so uncomfortable. They weren't laughing, and there was just this eerie hush. And it's like, move on, don't be making jokes. In fact, the only person laughing was Max himself. So that was that. And then another comedian started, he told a lot of pun jokes, and it was okay, but it gets very wearing. It's even Jimmy Carr, I find, is very wearing. And one of his jokes involved him dancing around the place with a rope and saying, Esmeralda, somebody's nicked my bell, I'm Quasimodo, and all the rest of it. Well, that pissed me off. It really did. Not so much because of what they were doing, although I really find the word Quasimodo very offensive, because it's been used, it was used as a name for me at school on many occasions, and it's just horrible. So I also get really fed up the fact that people find it so funny, and I'm telling you, they were laughing like drains. And you think, I was just comparing that. It's not the topic itself because I'm past caring. It doesn't hurt me. It doesn't affect me. You cannot hurt me with this anymore. You just can't. I've moved on and I am a totally different person than I was as a child. But I don't like the injustice. The fact that I know I keep going on about this, but it's still the only disability that is up for grabs and people find it hilarious. And yet it affects so many people. I know I've done the statistics on my podcast before, but it was really brought home. The fact that people were so uncomfortable about somebody who tried to make a joke about being unable to walk versus someone who tells a joke about, a hunchback of Notre Dame or whatever you want to say, Quasimodo. Both spinally related. And yet one is hilarious and up for grabs and the other one isn't. So that's my little rant. I feel I need to just keep voicing this, I don't know, until people get it, until people understand. I'm not saying don't be making those jokes, but stop doing the really offensive ones. I don't know how else to put it. I really don't. Maybe this is why I've been put on this earth, to raise awareness. It's just, if we're going to start being more inclusive about our language, then can we please start with words like Quasimodo? Even Scope changed their name back in, the 80s from Spastic Society to Scope. So even they understand the power of words. So, yeah, that's my little rant. I am obviously exceedingly tired. As I say, I've got a gig on Wednesday, so I will be able to talk about that. But I will tell you more about the AGM then once I've sort of boiled it down, because there's obviously 2 full days. There's a lot to say. And this podcast should only be 5 minutes. Much love and gratitude.